Good afternoon, Pottstown. We're here with another segment of the making of Pottstown, and we're fortunate enough not only to be speaking to Mr. Tom Hylton, who will talk a little bit about some of his life's accomplishments, but also he welcomed to his beautiful house here on in the middle of Pottstown. So we're under a nice shade tree, and that will segue into some of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit. So. Tom, thank you for having us here, and appreciate your time. I know you are a busy individual, so let's just talk about, and I did a little bit of kind of background on you, because you have an extensive background in the world of conservation and preservation and volunteering. So you grew up in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. And
very good.
Then you matriculated through high school and primary school and went to Pottstown University. Were you a journalism major there?
No.
No.
I majored in history.
Majored in history. Okay. See, I was not able to locate that. So in 1970, you and your wife moved to Pottstown?
72.
72. And you started working at the Mercury. And for most of our viewers, I think they remember the Mercury as a tactile paper. That was newsprint in that era, and it was really the king of newsprint, for lack of a better term. But can you talk a little bit about? You spent 24 years there, I believe, at the Mercury. What are some of your memories of the Mercury? And just your experience there.
So, you do your homework. I was at the Mercury, right, for 22 and a half.
Okay.
Okay, so my wife was a education major. So right out of Pottstown, she got a job. She was teaching in Catholic schools. And with a history major, there was no obvious thing to do. So my older brother was a newspaper reporter for the Allentown Morning Call.
Oh, yeah.
So for whatever he did, I could do. So I was going around to different papers. This was pre-computer, pre-internet. You went in person, they gave you an application, you filled it out. So I'm filling out an application in Pottstown, and a guy came and said, we're having an interior contest in our ad department, and we need somebody to sort some ad slips and add up how much advertising each salesman sold, so we can pay you cash. Would you like to do that for a while? I said, sure. So I came in every day in my three-piece suit, my only suit, sat at a card table, and I was sorting these slips, and all of a sudden, they fired a reporter. There was an immediate opening. It was great. So, hey, kid, you wanted to be a reporter. There's your typewriter, there's the phone, go to it.
Here's a trivia question. Do you remember that reporter's name? You don't
Who
need
they
to say
fired?
it. Yeah, you don't need to say it.
I do remember, and his father was the principal at Central Junior High.
Oh, really?
Was he there when you were at Central? You don't remember the name? All right, yeah, I won't bring it up. I don't want to get sued.
So you became a writer.
So I became a reporter. No help, no mentoring. I called up my brother in Allentown and said, what do I do now? So I became a reporter, and I love that. You go from being a nobody to being a somebody. Now I'm talking to the superintendent of schools, I'm talking to the mayor, I'm talking to the state representatives, the business community, and everybody's nice to you because you're going to write a story and you're going to mention them, so they want to make sure, they're friendly.
Right.
People today would have a very hard time conceiving what it was like then, because there's no internet, there's no Facebook, there's no Twitter, X, whatever.
Right.
So the only communication you could do was through the paper. They were very powerful.
Extremely.
And you want to communicate, you could write a letter to the editor. It would sit there for a month, and then they could edit whatever it is you wrote. You could take an ad out, which is really expensive. So we had a great deal of clout.
Mm-hmm.
And I benefited from that because I had a megaphone and most everybody else didn't.
So what was the peak distribution at that time for the Mercury?
The whole time I was there was around 29,500.
Now, where does that kind of stand as far as like classifications of newspaper distributions in the country? Is that a small, medium? Then, yes.
Then 29,000. We were a small paper, but we had total coverage of our area. There was no other paper to go to.
Right.
There were a few places where they had more than one paper, but not here.
Right.
We're now down, by the way, we're now down to about 2,400 print and 2,400 digital.
Wow.
So we're way down from where we were in their peak days.
Right. So, I mean, you've been in Pottstown for, I don't want to show your age, but 50 plus years now.
50
55.
years in this house, 50 years.
Of 50 years in this house.
Yeah.
Well, that's be even more impressive.
Yeah.
So you've been here 50 plus years. What were some of the highlights and some of the lowlights that you reported on throughout the history of Pottstown?
Well, here was the big event, the life-changing event for me, which was in 1982 when they tore down the high school across the street from my house. So it had been built in 24 as Pottstown High School. First class was 1925. You don't remember it.
No, I wasn't born yet.
A huge, hulking three-story building, 2 gymnasiums, an auditorium with a balcony and big rounded windows facing Chestnut Street. I could sit in my second-floor bedroom and I could see the kids sitting in the balcony for an assembly. And I loved having all the kids around all day long, you know, they coming in and out. And I thought, well, this will be here forever. You know, they're never, but they tore it down. And the reason is, this is true throughout the country, Pottstown was losing students because the middle class was moving out into the Pottsgroves and
Urban
the Coventrys and all that stuff. So we went from 5,000 students in 1970 to 4,000 students in 1980. That's a 20% drop. We had too many buildings. So that's the building across the street, the old high school, which was then a junior high when Gus went there. And then it was an intermediate school for a couple of years. And then they sold it to Emmanuel Lutheran, but tore it down. They didn't want this. It was the best built building in town. It was totally fireproof, steel and masonry, but it didn't have a parking lot. Oh, the teachers had to park in the street, had to walk to the school. And Emmanuel had the same problem. Their parishioners didn't want to walk. So they bought the school, they tore it down for a parking lot. So here's a building that's just defined the neighborhood, and suddenly it's gone and there's a big void. So I was very unhappy about that. The next year, 83, Francis and I were in the city of Lancaster for the AAUW used books sale, and it was held at the Lancaster City Library. And Fran and I were walking around and we're seeing all these trees. It's really nice, beautiful architecture in Lancaster, but all kinds of different sized trees. So I get back to Pottstown and I called up and I found they had a city arborist. I talked to the arborist and he said, oh yeah, we give trees to people or for a nominal fee, and we'll come and plant it in front of your house. I said, wow, what a great way to make your town look much more attractive. So I went to the publisher of the Mercury and said, hey, let's start a nonprofit. And we'll raise $500,000 and we'll plant lots and lots of street trees. We could never do that today. With social media, impossible, but then you could. So he said, yeah, that's a fine idea. And our former borough manager named Bob McKinney, who knew everybody in town, he agreed to be president. And I had put together a slide presentation. We went around to all the banks and to the industries in town, and we did raise nearly 500,000 people.
So that was Trees Inc.
That was Trees Inc.
Okay.
Little board. McKinney was the president. My publisher was the secretary. The president of First Federal Savings and Loan, back when we had such things, where Truist Bank is now. He was the treasurer. We raised this money, and it was the first lesson I had in the advantages of apathy. Now people say, oh, people are so apathetic. Apathy can be your friend. So we wrote letters to all the property owners in town. Now, if we had said, we're going to plant a tree in front of your house at no cost to you, all you have to do is fill out this postcard, mail it in, or give us a call, I would have gotten about 5 trees planted. Instead, we said, you'll notice there's this green dot in front of your house. If you don't want a tree, fill out this postcard or give us a call or whatever. And so, yeah, we definitely had a lot of people go, don't you dare put a tree in front of my house. But for the most part, nobody said anything. So we put in a lot of trees. We only had, I think, 2 instances where somebody came out and said, I didn't, nobody. So we just dug it up again, filled in the hole, paved it over. But we didn't have to do that more, as I said, I think more than twice.
So how many trees? Well, we were 2025, but in maybe the first 10 years of the program, how many trees did you plant?
It was really a 4-year period we
4
did
year?
the major planting, and we planted 1,500 trees.
Wow.
That made it made a big difference. And I thought, oh, people are going to love these trees. Oh, they're going to be so grateful.
They're not?
No, my first civic experience.
So that's a low light. A highlight and a low light.
No, I say these trees are so beautiful, it's transformed the town. But I have to tell you, that's not a widely held view in Pottstown.
Well, my wife would hold that view for sure.
Well, we just planted 500 trees in the school district.
I do, I
in
saw that.
Pottstown, we
I
got
saw
a
that.
grant to pay 80%, and everybody said, oh, these trees are so... No, they didn't.
That's good though.
But they're there, they look good.
So that was really your first foray into preserving existing structures, etc., while you were still at the Mercury. That kind of piqued your interest in...
Into public life, yes. That was
Okay.
my first foray into public life. And the other thing we did this very same year was we started a historic preservation organization to
Preservation
preserve historic
Pottstown.
building for Pottstown.
Preservation Pottstown,
Correct,
right.
correct. And it was a direct outgrowth of tearing down the high school, which was a great building. It was a
Mm-hmm.
crime to tear it down. So after a couple of years, we have a historic preservation ordinance, makes it harder for somebody to tear down a building. And also it governs the exterior of buildings in a certain historic district. And I wrote the nomination placing Pottstown in the National Register of Historic Places. And the practical benefit of that is, if you have a commercial building, an apartment building, or an office building, or a store, and it's in the historic district, and you want to renovate it, in the beginning you got a 25% tax credit. Now it's 20%. But that encourages people to fix up the building
Right.
to historic standards. And I did one of the first at 53 King Street. And I bought this house for $11,000. It had been a boarding house. It was in horrible shape. The roof leaked, you could smell it like a half a block away. So we totally gutted the building, rehabbed it. It was a little more than $100,000, and I got $25,000 back on my
Wow.
income tax. You could go back 3 years, and you could go forward 20 years. So you had plenty of opportunity to collect the money.
Right.
Now it's a 20% tax credit.
Still substantial.
Still substantial, so you look like the Security Trust building where the Blue Elephant is.
Right.
Okay, that was a $4 million project, and they got 20% back right away.
So how big is the historic district in Pottstown? What are the parameters of it?
Well, there's 2 National Register districts. And one goes from the Manatoni Creek up to the Hill School about,
Okay.
and it goes from the south side of High Street to Beach Street.
Okay.
And then the second one closely goes along High Street, and that starts at the post office, and that goes up to the McDonald's on either side.
So all those properties in there must comply with the historic preservation registries.
Not to complicate it, there's 2 different
Okay.
historic districts. I forgot to turn this thing off, excuse me. So one is the National Register, and that has no requirements whatsoever. It's only helpful if you're going to renovate a building.
Right, right.
So, but the other one's called a local ordinance district, and that's supposed to where the borough regulates what you're doing to the outside.
Okay, okay. So this gets you to kind of through your career at the Mercury, and really the next segment is you became an author of
I became an author.
a very respected book that's called Save Our Land, Save Our Town, which, and I don't want to embarrass you, you should be very proud of it, was the winner of a Pulitzer Prize from your editorials at the Mercury that kind of led you into this world of preservation and revitalization. Is that accurate?
Mostly accurate, that's
Okay.
correct. So in 1985, Bob Kurtz, who had been the publisher for a long time, and the Mercury was what you would call a sort of a family newspaper. It always made lots of money. People did not get fired. It was like a family.
Well,
Everybody was shouting at
the
each
guy's
other.
job you took did.
Very rare. He had to go out of his way to get fired, let me tell you. So anyway, we got a new publisher. And he came in, and within 2 weeks, he fired the editor, he fired the head of display ad, he fired the head of circulation.
Well.
He fired the head of the classified. Anybody who was in management, just about, he fired. So he took a liking for me to some reason. He would have made me editor, and then he would have fired me about 2 weeks later because I was not new material. But then he made me editorial writer. And I was probably the only one in the country who was still in the union. So I was not fired. I mean, he could demote me to something else, but he wasn't going to fire me. It was the only reason I agreed to do it. So then he left. And we had another publisher who was a kind of laissez-faire guy and let me write pretty much what I wanted to. So I wrote a lot of editorials about the loss of farmland and open space. I recommended that Chester County commissioners pass a $50 million bond issue to buy development rights from farmers to preserve the farms, and that passed, and that was my ticket to the Pulitzer.
Wow.
And
So
I can tell you,
can you-
everybody in Pottstown who knew me was shocked. They were absolutely flabbergasted.
So that led you to authoring this book. And this book really has been your, really a signature piece for your views, your advocacy, your basically your philosophy. Is that accurate?
That's correct. So that was my ticket. The Pulitzer was my ticket to getting a fellowship. But let me back up and say, as you mentioned, I was born in Wyomissing. Wyomissing, which most people know where it is, sort of, that is the best designed municipality in Pennsylvania, easily, because it was owned by two German industrialists who hired a landscape architect, put in all the streets and where the sidewalks were going, and before they even paved the roads, they had put in 2,000 street trees. They now have 7,500.
Right.
And so it's beautifully landscaped.
It is.
You know, it's kept its value.
Yes.
Wyomissing High School is the only one that doesn't have stadium lights, and it's not because they can't afford it. They don't like
They don't
stadium
want 'em.
lights. It doesn't fit in with the community.
Right, right.
In fact, for a long time, they didn't even want to put a fence around it. But anyway, so that was my background, seeing what a beautiful community could look like. And also, I had gone K to 12. I had walked to school all the way through, from kindergarten to 12th grade. In fact, I wanted to walk to college. I lived in Allenton at the time.
Close.
Graduated from William Allen. I could have walked there. One little hiccup in the plan. Muhlenberg didn't accept me.
Oh.
Oh, they didn't want me. They didn't want me. So we had an expression at William Allen: if you can't go to college, go to Pottstown.
My brother will take issue with that.
Well, there's Gus.
I believe
the
Gus
whole
will
family
too.
went to Pottstown.
I believe Gus will too.
Well, I didn't want to go, but once I got there, I really liked Hylton. It's a great little town, a great little college, and the very first week. This girl, Frances Wismer, in my English class, she took a liking to me, and
It's amazing it's not the place, it's the people.
it is. She followed me around. She gave the evil eye to anybody.
We
who
better
came
bring
up to
her
me,
out here and
whatever.
say, make sure she says she followed you around.
Yeah, that's the way it was. I remember it well.
We might need verification on that. I'm not sure that appears in any Wikipedia space.
So as soon as we graduated, we got married. She had a job right away in the Catholic schools until I was here in Pottstown at the Mercury. Then she was able to get a job in the school district, so we were
Right.
both here.
Right.
Okay.
So now you've kind of moved into this genre of revitalization, preservation. What's your motivation for? And I mean, I'm sure it's many people's motivation is to stop the building and preserve land, farms, renovate buildings that are dilapidated and are blighted. But when did you find that was your true calling? Like when did you start to see things materialize that this is a place that I can do that, I have a vehicle to be able to do it, and this is the spot that I want to spend my life in?
So it was a result of the fact that I had always lived in walking communities.
Right.
And I couldn't understand the rationale, still can't, of people, we know some right here in this space, people who move out where you have to drive for everything.
Right.
Everything you drive to. And I like the idea of being able to walk everywhere, walking to school. And the first 10 years I was here, when I was fixing up the house, we had a real viable downtown.
Right.
You know, anything you needed you could buy. Plus, we had a train station. And I could walk down to the train station, and in an hour I'm in Center City, Philadelphia,
Right.
and back home. So I thought it was just such a sensible way of life. So if you're looking for the epiphany, it's when they tore down the high school.
Okay.
You people are crazy. I mean, you want to drive everywhere you're living, to me, these not very attractive suburbs.
So you've obviously become an expert in this field, as recognized by your over 500 speaking engagements to governors, land conservationists, land planners, etc. What have you found from all these different venues that you attend, cities, communities? What's their acceptance of being able to revitalize, urban towns, small towns, etc., and through evidence and data, is it doable?
We're swimming against the tide. I've been swimming against the tide ever since I started this. I mean, there are pockets. The places that are walkable are in Pennsylvania, for example, are the traditional cities that have always been here.
Right.
And out west, they have a few places that they started from scratch, but not really much of anything. So the walkability is focused in the places that were built before the car came along.
Right.
And there has been, cities have ups and downs. Center City, Philadelphia, of course, has become a very attractive place. New
Right.
York, extremely attractive. Brooklyn, Queens,
Sure.
I mean, people want to live there.
I have a daughter that lives there. We were just up there. It's all walking.
It's all walking.
She doesn't
and-
own a car.
Yeah, and very expensive to own a car, and where do you put it?
Doesn't want one anyway, though.
Right. So there's a certain segment of the population. But to say, oh, everybody realized, oh, we made a mistake. We should go back. It's not happening.
So what are the roadblocks to be able to, let's, for example, you see houses in Pottstown, different real estate parcels in Pottstown that have sat dormant for years, whereas someone bought them, a developer, et cetera, but they're not being renovated, there's no move forward. Why do people find it difficult to move a property forward? Is it simply the economics of it?
I think Pottstown is doing a lot better.
Oh, I agree.
If you went to 20 years ago, yeah, nothing was happening. But now, prices are rising, not as much as in the suburbs, but they were rising.
Right.
For a couple of decades, they were flat or going down.
Right.
But now, a lot of people are fixing up houses, and they appreciate that we have stuff they can't duplicate anywhere else.
Right.
So you get some really beautiful houses. So yeah, prices are going up. We have code issues with, every town has code issues, and it would be helpful to have, it's true, school districts and many other things, people who had common sense and could look at the larger picture instead of a code officer coming in and saying, well, you know, this outlet needs to be 2 inches higher,
Right.
and all that. Say, hey, somebody's fixing up the house. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I love my house, and it's loaded with code violations.
Right.
And you know, when we go and somebody's selling it, it depends how much hassle they're going to get, what they have to do to bring it up to code. And school districts run into it all the time as well.
Right. So I'll play devil's advocate a little bit as well. So when you do this revitalization, you know, some people call it gentrification at times when, you know, developers come in or investors come in and purchase a large number of properties, and that sounds good and it's positive. They renovate them, prices go up, but you're really moving a strata of economic. There's a strata of economic families that can no longer afford it as well. So it's a balancing act. How do you manage that?
Well, as a Pottstown person, my feeling is it's a societal issue. It shouldn't be a Pottstown issue.
Right.
I mean,
But
we're
we're here.
struggling to keep our head above water.
Right.
We're trying to keep viable, and it's extremely difficult. And why is it on us to provide the affordable housing? It's the county. And we saw a little bit of an instance recently with our homeless problem,
Right.
that the county actually came in and they bought the old Holiday Inn, the Days Inn or whatever,
Right.
and it's
Temporary housing.
temporary housing, but it's something that in the past the county would have never thought to do something like.
Right.
Hey, that's your problem, Pottstown. So there could be some hope down in the future that the county would start doing a few hands-on things to make housing more affordable. It hasn't happened, but
Right. So have you heard, where are we with the light rail system? Is that infrastructure and that world just too large a financial piece?
I know I should get out the pom-poms and jump up and down and say rah rah. I mean, nobody appreciated the train system better than I did because I used it for 10
We
years.
did too.
But what happened is it died out because not enough people were using the train.
Right.
So there's a hope that if we put this back in, all this infrastructure back in, people will start using it. I'm not sure that would be the case.
Right.
And now we have a very transit unfriendly president. And so for the next 4 years at least, if we're going to look to the federal government to help out, I don't see it's happening.
Right.
But people want to believe, and as I said, nobody appreciates it more than I did because I used to go to Philadelphia a lot, just walk down the street,
Right.
hop on the train.
Well, you were an avid walker. You
Yes.
walk quite
Yeah.
a bit.
I did.
You know, and I believe that, and I'm an avid trail user, and I think some of the Montgomery County and all over Commonwealth, the trails have been what I would call a semi-treasure, but yet they have become another issue as far as safety, as far as, you know, being down there by yourself, etc. How do we deal with that? Is that just on the police department, or is that?
It's an irrational cultural fear. Crime.
Right.
I'm here 50 years. I don't have that much of a crime problem. The danger I have is when I get in the car. That's the most dangerous thing that we do is drive. But people are used to driving everywhere. They can't imagine not driving everywhere. So they put out of their mind that, you know, I could get killed. But we had a couple people at the Mercury who were killed in car accidents.
Sure.
And, oh yeah, well, it happens sometimes.
Right.
But, and this is subtle ways that society and our society deteriorates. So Frances was teaching for 35 years in Pottstown. The last year she was here, 2008, That's the last year. The doors are all open in the schools. Just walk right in. The door's open. There's no danger. So occasionally, not too often, you'd have some irate parent, and they'd come in and they'd fly in. They'd go up to the classroom and bawl out the teacher. You did that. My wife told this fourth grader one time. The fourth grader comes up and says, "Mrs. Hylton, there's no Santa Claus, is there?" And she said, "No." And that parent flew in to the elementary school.
Sacrilegious there.
Ah, how dare you? So, but anyway, if, for example, school shootings happen, but arming the teachers, locking all the doors, all this special material you put on the windows, and then scaring the hell out of everybody with intruder drills and so forth. Where was the worst, can you think off the top of your head, the worst classroom massacre in Pennsylvania? Where was the worst one?
The one in Reading. The one in, I can't think of it now. I can't think the name. It's, I don't know. I know it, but I don't know it.
Well, I don't know that one. Which well, I'm talking.
Oh, that's the Connecticut one. That was Connecticut. That's not Pennsylvania.
Let's not get Connecticut in Pennsylvania.
No. That's that was just.
Yeah, that was the worst national one. Yes,
right.
Truly, the worst one in Pennsylvania was a one-room Amish schoolhouse.
Oh, that's right.
In the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And the Amish are all pacifists. Who would have ever thought something like that could happen? But here it happens in an Amish. But people are all afraid this is going to happen. If you want to kill somebody, it's easy. I mean, it's really easy, and you don't need. I mean, some terrible tragedies. Toronto, a guy was in a van and he killed like 32 people.
Right.
He got up on the curb. And in France, there was a guy, he had a box truck and he killed like 50 people in 3 minutes. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. And then we make each other so afraid of each other that it actually makes the world more dangerous. And when you speak about trails, for example, people trails, if you're walking in a trail, that's a nice scenic thing. And I like to walk in the Greenway and so forth, French Creek State Park.
Right.
But if you're walking in Pottstown on the street, you're automatically making it safer. If you're a normal person and you're walking around,
Oh, I agree with that.
you're now making it safer.
I agree with
But
that.
when everybody's afraid to walk,
Well, there's no one there.
yeah, it's
Right. So you talked a little bit about your wife coming to Pottstown, and now your next chapter has been a school board member.
Yes.
So let's talk about your number one, your interest. And I will say that I've known, I mean, I know you personally, but I don't know your philosophy, but I've read many of your editorials, and I would probably consider you a financial conservative, if that's an accurate term for your thought process. But I think that you're a watchdog for public money, and I think that's a good thing. So tell us a little bit about your role as a school board member, and what oversight that you find most interesting about being on the board.
Well, let's start with why I decided to run for the school
Okay.
board. Something I really didn't want to do. I wanted other people to do it, and then I just tell them what to do. But it didn't work out that way. So if you recall, there was a scheme arose to tear down 2 city blocks of Pottstown, about 150 houses,
I was going to talk about that.
and build the mega campus.
Yes.
Which, from a person who will not be named, no longer around. But it was a completely insane idea. But people are very attracted by money, and the first thing was, well, the governor, he's going to give us $20 million if we do this. Well, you might get $20 million, but you're going to have to pay a local share, which might be 20%, which is a lot of money. And then all you're going to accomplish is tearing down buildings.
Right.
He's not going to build a school, so you're going to spend $20 million to clear out.
Raise an area.
To raise an area where people are living and they happen to like it, you know? So that was insane. So we got the neighborhood schools team, and we did the advertising and the flyers and all that, and we got in. So my aim was to save our 5 walkable neighborhood schools.
Right.
And the big idea of the mega campus, that was out once we were in. But the superintendent and many in the school community, they wanted to go to 3 schools, 3 big schools, kind of like Pottsgrove.
Right.
They wanted to go, what are they, cluster schools.
Right.
K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, taking away the walkability, because now your neighborhood school, even if you're across the street, it's only good for 2 years.
Right.
And they wanted to close Barth, and I had a very good relationship with the head of the housing authority. And he wrote a letter and he said, Barth is essential to Penn Village. Those kids need that school. You can't close.
Bright Hope.
Bright Hope. So he killed that idea off, thankfully. And then it was Franklin, they were in whatever the fight. So we fought about that for a couple of years, and that was very unpleasant. You know, it's Hatfields and McCoys. So we ended up saving 4 of the 5 schools. And as you know, we saved Lincoln, Franklin, Rupert, and Barth. So Edgewood is now an excess school. And the superintendent recommended, and the board was all ready to sell it to the Hill School for $1.3 million. It was a steal. We run through $1 million in a couple of weeks. Are you crazy? That's irreplaceable, that school building.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they were champing at the bit to buy it.
Oh, right next to their property.
Yeah, so decided not to sell it. And then there were various schemes. See, school board members, in the running of a school, they really don't understand it. I don't understand it myself, and I know it better than most. But buildings they can understand. So here we have this building. Let's move the 5th grade into Edgewood. I had to go through the whole thing about it wasn't educationally a good idea to separate, have a separate school, especially
Right.
for our kids. And then, well, let's move all the kindergartners to Edgewood. And then Stephen Rodriguez, who's the best superintendent we've had in the 50 years I've been here, Stephen Rodriguez started putting in special.
Did he pay you to say that on TV?
No, but he is.
That's good.
I butted heads with him many times, but nonetheless, I appreciate.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and he's personally fiscally conservative.
Very much so. And invested. He's totally invested.
Yes. So he said, we're spending all this money to bus kids out to these special schools, special ed schools.
Right.
And the kids are spending long periods of time on a van.
In transit.
It's terrible.
Right.
I mean, if you have trouble in school in the first place, the worst thing you can do is put them in a van for 45 minutes
Right.
and send them to the other end of the county. It costs a fortune, just the transportation. So let's do it at Edgewood. And he had a very interesting concept. Here's one school I know about. There's probably many of them, but at Penn State, the State College School District, they have a high school that's 2 buildings on each side of a major street. So the kids are constantly crossing the street to go from one high school building to the other. Now, is it one high school? Yeah, of course it's one high school, but it's 2 buildings.
Right.
So we're saying we're this small community, so of course the special ed kids have to be integrated, you know?
Sure.
But we are, because we're so small. So he persuaded the state, and they came out and they looked at it. And they said, well, we're very close to the middle school. You know, we're close to the elementary school, so yes, we can have some special ed kids in there, even though they're not regular ed classes.
Right.
So, and that's turned out to be a huge success because it saved the district a lot of money.
Right. Right.
And the parents like the idea that it's right here. You know, you're not sending some kid to Abington
Sure.
for whatever it is. So Edgewood's turned out to be a success, and I think this year we'll be renting out 3 classrooms to preschool to the IU,
Okay.
which we've done in the past.
Right, right. So what are some of the challenges in the school world right now?
Well,
obviously budgets. It's budget season, so that's always number one on everybody's banner. But what are some of the other challenges in public school?
I know, I'm interrupting. That's
okay.
my habit. That's why
No,
people
that's
love
fine.
me. The number one enemy of a quality education, it's the Pennsylvania Department of Education and all the incredibly stupid rules and regulations they have that make it so difficult to do anything. So, for example, with the middle school, we have a 5-8 middle school.
I know it well.
You know it well.
I know it well.
You know it well. And by the way, I was the one who pushed putting the 5th grade in the middle school. Did not make me popular because we just had 6, 7,
I
8.
do remember that now that you say that.
Yeah, and they had all this space.
Right.
And now, what? I have to share space?
That's exactly right.
Oh, we're so crowded we can't get anything done. It's never reached a capacity. It's not even gotten, well, it's gotten close to.
It's a big school.
Capacity.
There's 800 students there?
Huge.
Is it 800?
900.
Oh, okay.
And one time it was at 950. Now it's at peak.
What's the capacity? 1100?
Yeah, about 1,100.
Right.
So we never got there.
Right.
But they were used to having for
Sure.
8 years all
Right.
this in the world. So
That'd be somebody taking your backyard. You're used to having it. Doesn't mean
Yeah,
you use it all the time.
That's
but
right. So that's a big lesson about schools. You give something, then you want to take it away. Oh,
Correct.
Oh. When Francis was teaching and you were sick, I have to call the principal. How sick can I sound? I can't make it into. Now it's all computerized. You go to your computer, hit a button.
Absolutely.
You have teachers now taking mental health days. Okay, all right. But anyway, so we have all these subs, permanent subs, and that's part of the cuts that Mr. Rodriguez has proposed. Oh, we can't. Well, anyway, so one of the many things about rules and regulations that you're so focused on following the rules and regulations that you lose sight of what's the big picture here. We're getting kids ready to be adults, to get jobs, be productive members of society, and that's all out the windows because we got to follow this rule, and this rule it says, and so forth and so on.
So where do you see education going in the next 3, 5, 10 years?
Well,
Public education.
Public education.
Public education,
Public
not-
education. The hope always is it's going to get so extreme that they're going to start giving schools some freedom to make their own rules. In fact, if you go back to charter schools,
Right.
okay, charter schools are considered like the enemy, but the number one promoter of charter schools back in the 80s was, his name will come to me in a second, Albert Schenker, who was the president of the American Federation of Teachers. He's a big union guy. His idea was the public school could be a charter school in the school district. So we'll pick Franklin and we'll say, okay, teachers, if you agree to do certain things, we're going to free you of all this
Right.
regulation.
Philadelphia School District has numerous charter schools.
But they're in the district.
They're in the district.
Yeah, but now we have Renaissance Academy in
Right,
Phoenixville,
right.
which is, I don't have anything against Renaissance Academy, except that it's sucking out our best students.
And costing over student, the cost to send a student there is not equal to what a student is educated in their own home district.
Well, that
The cost.
that is a long story about how you pay the charter school a percentage of what you're paying.
Right.
So there's nothing a charter school would love better than having students from Lower Merion because they're the highest spending school district in the
Right.
state. So they're getting a piece of what Lower Merion's paying.
Right.
Whereas if you have a Reading charter school student, you're getting a piece of one of the lowest spending
Right.
districts in the state. But anyway, the idea was of the charter school originally was to free schools from all this regulation, which we don't have. But going to the middle school. So in 88 or 89, the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Education did a big study of middle schools. Of course, there's like 50 of them, but they did one and they said it'd be really good if you could keep the teachers and the students together for more than 1 year. If 3-year middle school, just have the teachers move with the kids. Travel with the kids. And my wife did that at Lincoln, where she kept her kids for 3 years. Her problem was finding teachers who were willing to join the loop. Because if she's moving from first to second, then some second grade teacher has to be displaced, move to first, and they didn't want to do that and all that. So, but in any case, if you want to try and do that at Pottstown Middle School, for example, well, you have all the certification problem. You're not certified.
Half for middle, half for elementary.
Yeah, whatever they are. Well, it used to be, you were secondary or elementary.
Right.
But now it's K3, it's 4A,
K to 6, K to 5, right.
All these certifications, and then you're certified, to teach math, but you're not certified. So you can't do that. The teachers don't want to really do it in the first place. If they tried it, they'd like it, but the certification rules just make it impossible. So because of certification, there are all kinds of things you cannot do. Well, take Kathleen Devaney, the headmaster at the Hill School. Okay? She taught history, exclusive private schools, or she taught German, she taught English to Germans. She can't teach in our school. She's not certified.
So where are we going? Where's the education world going?
Throw out the certifications. It's the first thing. Certifications are nonsense. If you have a college education, then the next thing is, can you do it? You can have all the certifications in the world. You can have a PhD. That doesn't mean you can go into a classroom and teach a bunch of students. Malcolm Gladwell did Malcolm Gladwell in New York. Yep. He did a great column about that, talking about football.
I cut that out.
Quarterback.
I did. I cut it out. I did.
Quarterbacks. So you don't mind if I rant on about this?
No.
Because it was a very interesting analogy.
I believe you cited it in one of your editorials.
Well, of course I did.
I did. I actually cut it out. I had it hanging in my office.
You may see it again soon.
How sad is that?
So, you're a high school quarterback. Coaches come, or a college quarterback. The scouts come. Excuse me. Man, this guy looks great. He can do it all. You pay him $5 million to sign or whatever, and he can't do it. It's much tougher in professional than it is in college.
Absolutely.
So the only way you can find out is to try it. You draft somebody who goes out, he tries it. Maybe in a year or two he can pick it up. Mostly they can't. A few can hang on and do it.
Right.
But there's no way of predicting without jumping into the field. So when you're talking about teaching, whatever grade level it might be, student teaching is helpful, more helpful than anything else you're going to do.
Very much so.
But the only way you're going to know is you're going to get into a classroom of kids, and you might be able to get it through a year or two, and you might pick it up, and you might be able to do well. But there's no way of predicting outside of student teaching, and some people go into student teaching, and that's it right there.
They're done.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
I didn't realize how hard this was. So really what Gladwell's suggesting, which I think is a great idea, you have a college degree, go ahead, teach, go ahead and try it. And let's see if you can pick it up. No, I mean, very few people can do it right away the first year, but if...
That's like any job.
Yeah, if you can hang on...
Who's good at their job their first year out of whatever? I mean...
You can hang on for
a little while. You were cutting coupons, so you were counting coupons.
And I never did it long enough to get good at it.
So I want to kind of wrap things up here, because maybe we need a second segment down the road. What are some of the things that you feel have improved in Pottstown? And I'll say through your efforts. I think that's fair. Through your ideology, your vision, your advocacy. What are some of the things in Pottstown that you feel have been improved? You talked about some of the historic landmark pieces where you know, buildings have to comply with a certain set of regulations, etc. Anything else you can think of that you feel pretty strongly about?
Well, there's the street trees,
Sure.
okay? The historic architecture that we've preserved.
Right.
The neighborhood schools, they almost went away.
Right,
I
they
mean,
did.
they almost went away, and they're here. And I think they're here to stay. And I think for the people appreciate them for the most part. Borough Hall and High Street. That was one of those things where
That was the same concept as the school, wasn't it?
well, they were going to build Borough Hall in the parking lot next to the old Borough Hall. And the first thing you're going to say, if you're going to spend $4 million, this is 1995
Right,
money,
right.
you're going to spend $4 million, put it out on High Street where everybody can see it.
Yep.
People don't know where Borough Hall is. They
Right.
have no idea where it is. You put it out on High Street, you have this beautifully designed building, and then you have a park with a fountain next to it. It's now the center of time
Right.
of the town. And the Urban Land Institute had come in 1988, and they said, you need a center. You need a place where everybody can come together, which happens all the time.
Right.
You know, you're going to have a demonstration,
Sure.
or you're going to have some kind of a festival or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
Fête en Blanc, you know, they have that at the park in front of Borough
There
Hall.
every year.
So, but that came within a whisker of not happening. That was, you don't have, that's another hour program of how we managed to pull that off. Then there are, when you're talking about the zoning and subdivision ordinance, which yours truly wrote back in 2002, if you come into Hanover Street and you see these brick townhouses,
Right.
okay, that's not because some developer come in and decided to do it. That's because the planning commission hired a consultant who recommended to the developer, you can do this, and if you do it, we'll give you more density so you can make money. So the fact that they have brick fronts,
Right.
the fact that they have alleys behind them so you're not looking at cars
Right.
when you come in, that was all a result of the zoning and subdivision ordinance, which was a big win. That's the entryway to Pottstown.
Right.
It looks good.
So does Pottstown follow those recommendations closely?
We have not had a whole lot of new construction, but what we have had has been good. There's that, and then May Street, you know what I'm talking
Yes.
about?
Yes.
Those houses are all very attractive
Right.
looking, and they have alleys behind them. And then there's Manatoni Village, which a lot of people never see. They don't even know it's in Pottstown. But you go up Manatoni Street, and there's a little subdivision up the hill.
Oh,
it
right,
backs up
right,
against
right. The propane place.
yeah.
Suburban propane.
Yeah, so there's sidewalks, there's street trees, there's alleys behind.
You're right. Most people don't know that's up there.
Well, it's a 55 and
55 and
older,
over
and there's
community.
no reason to go there
Right.
unless you know somebody.
Right.
But it was definitely a design win.
Right.
Or take the McDonald's. Now that's fairly common now to see an attractive looking McDonald's, but when we built our McDonald's on High Street, that was unknown to have a brick McDonald's that actually looks like something.
Right.
They
Burger
actually,
King followed suit. A little bit.
a little, but
It's better.
the McDonald's, Burger King, they were just redoing their building. With McDonald's, they were starting from scratch.
Right.
And McDonald's actually flew an architect in from Chicago to look over Pottstown to design the
match.
new McDonald's as a result of, hey, I've looked around, I see this historic, I want it to fit in. So those are definite victories
Yeah.
for Pottstown.
Anything as we close you want to add? Anything?
I can't believe how much stuff we've already gone through.
Well, try to be efficient.
You were very
Well,
efficient.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting us to your home.
My pleasure.
And again, thank you, Pottstown, for watching, and hope you learned something. I know I did. And we'll see you next time on the Making of Pottstown.